Welcome to History and Politics with Dr. Brovkin. Today, my dear friends and subscribers and visitors to my channel, I'd like to answer one question. What can the coalition of the willing do for Ukraine? The reason I'm asking this question is that 2 days ago, on the 24th of August, the coalition of the willing had one more session in Kiev on the occasion of the Day of Independence. I can't resist by just commenting a couple of words on the Day of Independence, which was proclaimed in August 1991. And then there was a referendum in December, and then there was, prior to that, a couple of weeks, there was a meeting of the Communist Party chiefs of Russia, Ukraine, and Belarus, and they jointly announced that they walk out of the Soviet Union. And this happened in the same year that earlier in that year, all these republics, including Russia and Belarus and Ukraine, were among those who voted in a referendum staged by Mr. Gorbachev to preserve the Soviet Union. And the citizens of Ukraine voted in their majority to preserve the Soviet Union. And then just about half a year later, the Communist Party chiefs assembled and decided to quit the Soviet Union. What they're actually trying to do was to undermine the power of Gorbachev. But this is a separate story, and if you're interested, you could read about it in my book, From Vladimir Lenin to Vladimir Putin, which will be on your screen later in the program. In any case, what's also important about this Declaration of Independence is that it led to the Ukrainian constitution, which actually was based on the neutral status for Ukraine in the constitution, open borders with Russia, and freedom of movement of people between Russia, Ukraine, and Belarus, kind of modeled on the European Union. That is the kind of independent Ukraine that was supposed to be. And it lasted until 2014, when there was a coup d'etat, and the people who came to power wrote in the constitution their desire to join NATO. And then what some people call the Project Ukraine began, which was a project against Russia. In any case, we fast forward to these celebrations, and there were this coalition of the willing that came to Kiev. Now, my question today will be, what exactly did they promise, and who exactly is willing, and who is willing to do what, and what is said unsaid, which means unwilling. So, the most spectacular breakthrough, which was picked up by all the Western media, was that the British and the French promised to Ukraine what Ukraine needs most, and that is missiles. The British Prime Minister brought the blueprints of Storm Shadow in a theatrical manner. He gave it to Zelensky as if they were going to be produced in Ukraine. Similarly, President Macron has said that the deliveries of French interceptor missiles would be speeded up, and this is called Aster 30 interceptors plus Scalp version of Storm Shadow will be delivered to Ukraine. But there was no specifics. There were no numbers, and that there were no commitments as to specific dates. So in many ways, this was a gesture to support Zelensky and the Ukraine, and these are somewhat different. I'll come back to it on the occasion of the Independence Day. Now, before I go any further, let me comment on these transfers, because this is just a theatrical move, because Foreign Minister Lavrov commented on this by saying that this act, in terms of international law, means that Britain and France have declared themselves to be party to the war, because by international law, open delivery of weapons system and joint production of those is qualified as participation in the war. So that's not Lavrov's interpretation. This is a matter of fact. And Lavrov mentioned, and Peskov repeated yesterday, that means that Russia reserves for itself the right to act accordingly. So in one way, we could say that this coalition of the willing step of what they thought effective public relations campaign of blueprints and deliveries of missiles may in fact lead at a later date to Russian hits on those facilities. Now, obviously, if they are produced in Ukraine, the Russian intelligence is going to find out and they're going to blow them up, even if they are deep underground. But let's move on. The next thing that the coalition of the willing promised is actually a repetition of what EU promised, and that is $26 billion or euros by the end of the year, a part of the package of 90 billion that was voted earlier. However, so far, up to now, there's only 6 billion that have been delivered. And the important thing here is that even if these 26 billion will be delivered, which is in question, and the reason that is in question is because in order for them to be delivered, they have to be approved. And the reason that they could be approved is if Ukraine is winning, or is at least has a chance to survive, to use the money. And that is, my dear friends, why the Western media launched a propaganda campaign announcing everywhere that the Ukraine is winning, that